Okay, Rabbi Sai, Shovavim tat. Truma Tetzava, Matzah Shabbos, coming out to learn Torah. Not just any Matzah Shabbos, a Matzah Shabbos with pouring rain, extra Mesiras Nefesh for Torah. Gishmak, gishmak. I know you can feel it listening from wherever you're listening, huh? Okay, so here we go. Today I decided we're going to do something that we're going to try to clear some confusion. There's a couple of points, a couple of questions that have been asked many times by people in Hilchos Nida, and some of these are more lumdisha points, maybe less halachadik. Some, we'll see. There's going to definitely tie into halacha, but questions that people feel guilty of, or people just don't really get. So let's get to the bottom of it. So number one, the Torah deduces from the word bebasra that a woman only becomes a nida midaraisa if there is a hargasha. What is hargasha? We need when the flow comes, it needs to come with hargasha. What's hargasha? So hargasha there's three different pshatim in the achronim. There's the pshat of the Chasam Sofer, which is nizdei haguf. Nizdei haguf is the bodily trembling, the shaking of the guf. L'maisa, our women don't have this. We don't really know exactly what it is, and our women don't have it. Then there's the pshat of the Trumas Hadeshin. It's the feeling of the psichas hamakar, the feeling of the opening of the uterus. Some little minor sting feel of the opening of the uterus. Okay, we don't feel that either. Our women don't feel that either. That's number two. And those, by the way, are pretty much accepted across the board, more or less accepted as being hargashos. Meaning if you hold one, it doesn't mean that you don't hold of the other. You could hold the multiple options as potential hargashos. Number three, which is the one that is the most debated, is zivas davar lach. Not everybody actually even holds a zivas davar lach. Some sefer doesn't hold of it. But zivas davar lach, what does zivas davar lach mean? It means feeling some form of internal flow. What is this internal flow from where to where? What does it mean? When you feel the blood coming out of her body. The Chavas Das learns it to be that it is a relatively more internal flow. It's from the Mekar to the Tzavarechim, from the uterus to the cervix. Now, our women don't feel this. In fact, some claim that it's not even medically, physically possible to feel this. Not such a kasha to me. I mean, we see in lots of ideas within Hilchos Nida, we see lots of Mishana Tvayim. It seems to be clear, like for example, that women had their period the first three months of pregnancy, even when the Shulchan Aruch was written, and that's 400 years ago. And then 200 years ago, you see Rabbi Akiva Hager's what? Women don't have their periods during the first 3 months of pregnancy. Things change. That's how it works in the world, over time. So I don't know. Maybe women used to be able to feel that, and now they can't feel that. It's not such a kasha, but women can't feel it. Then in that, there's a shita of Noidim Yehuda, who Noidim Yehuda holds it's a little bit more external than that. It's from the Tzav HaRechem to the Beis HaChitzon. From the cervix to the vaginal canal. That's something that depends who you ask. Some Rabbanim will say nobody ever feels that, whereas others claim that there are some women that feel it, a small percentage of women feel it. It's unclear exactly in the metzias of... Definitely most women don't feel it, that's for sure. But whether it's a 30% or a 0%, or that kind of depends who you ask. But l'maisa, for the most part, women don't feel that. What do they normally feel? They might feel wetness on the outside, but wetness on the outside is certainly not considered zivas davar lach. Okay, so based on what I just said, it seems like our women don't have hargashos. So does that mean that there's no such thing as nida midaraisa anymore? Is that what it means? So there's one thing everybody agrees. No. We're not saying there's no, and there would be lots of nafkaminas and sfeikas and whatever, etc. But no, we're not going to say that there's no such thing as a nida midaraisa. There is a nida midaraisa. One out of two mahalchim to explain why there's a nida midaraisa. The first mahalch is we call it the Hargashos. The Hargashos, and this is the more famous one relatively. The Hargashos says, no. Our women still do have hargashos nowadays. Oh, but you ask them, they don't know what you're talking about in this dei haguf and what. They have it, but they're not as in tune to their bodies. And a lot of people like to say this, like, the world's such a hectic place, and with the lights and the electricity and the Aruch HaShulchan didn't have all that, but whatever. But Kal V'chomer nowadays, it's all hectic and whatever. But I've heard many people explain the Aruch HaShulchan, like, in Lita in 1886, they didn't have that stuff, so tzarchin, exactly. But L'maisa, I guess life was still more hectic and exciting in Lita 1886 than it was, in the 1400s or whatever, So maybe. Okay. But L'maisa, that's this pshat that the women still have it, but they don't notice it. So I'm going to ask you a question. If that's the case, why is it that when a woman has a kesem, we say that she's not a nida midaraisa? Meaning, if the idea, the litmus test is, did you have hargasha? Well, over here, maybe she did have hargasha. Just like you say by the flow, maybe she had hargasha. Maybe by the kesem, maybe she had hargasha. And maybe she should be a nida d'oraisa as well. So the Aruch HaShulchan says, no, not so fast. You need the way that most explain it, the way that Moshe Feinstein explains it, we'll work with that. You need to have a certain amount of blood, a certain amount of dam, to be considered a normal flow, to be considered a flow that we expect that there was a hargasha. So if it's just a small amount of dam, we don't expect that it's a hargasha. But if it's a good amount of dam, which is, let's say, some people say 4 grisim. The numbers are really arbitrary, whatever. A certain amount of dam, then that's a flow, and therefore we assume there was a hargasha. Less than that, we don't assume so. Or the Shevet Levi says a little bit different. I actually like the Shevet Levi better, personally. That he says, if it's the amount of dam that she normally sees by a flow, so it's a flow. If it's the amount of dam that she normally sees by a stain, it's a stain. She has to be able to kind of pick up on it herself, depending on how much dam she has as a person. Different women have different amounts.
He's not saying that the amount of dam makes...
Right.
He's saying it's the amount of dam that indicates that we assume that there was a hargasha.
Exactly. Fine, so let me ask you a question now. Now the next question that we're going to ask is, now that you're telling me, especially, it's true within the Aruch HaShulchan, really either way, you explain it, but I'm working more than the Moshe way, less with the Shevet HaLevi way. The Shevet HaLevi was more about a normal, but either way, they both hold the Aruch HaShulchan's mahalach. When a woman does a bedika, and she finds a little bit of blood on her ein makabel tuma bedika cloth, right, less than a gris, ein makabel tuma, why is that a problem? Why is she tameh if she finds a little blood? So we say that there's a Gemara in Nida that says that the feeling, the sensation of a bedika, is like confusing with you could confuse with the hargasha of hargashos Nida. So therefore, we're going to assume that this blood there was a hargasha. But wait a second, that just messed up. We just explained in the Aruch HaShulchan, because the Aruch HaShulchan just explained that when there's a little bit of blood, we don't assume there's a hargasha. Over here, you're throwing a little speck of blood, usually, nothing major. So why are we suddenly assuming that there's going to be that there was a hargasha? So for this, you're going to have to take out your finger a little bit, and you have to explain like this: that there's a chazaka that dam ba'im hargasha. Normally, we assume that blood comes with our hargasha. And also, normally we assume that when there's a lot of blood, there's hargasha. Right? Now, when by a kesem, was there a lot of blood? No. Was there any indication of hargasha? No. So you got nothing going for you. She's not a nida midaraisa. When it comes to a bedika seid, since we're going to get confused with the feeling of hargasha, one of two different pshatim, by the way, it's either pshat that when you do this, you'll miss the feeling of hargasha. During when she's doing the bedika, if there was a hargasha at that time, she would miss it. Or option 2 is that, pshat number 2 in this is that feeling of doing the bedika includes the feeling of hargasha. So she knows she felt it. She doesn't know whether to attribute it to the bedika or whether to attribute it to hargashos nida. She felt it. Included in that feeling is the feeling of hargasha. So
that sounds more likely with going to the base of chitza.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So So let's, especially if we work with the second mahal that we just said. So over here, you had that hargasha feeling. It's very hard to, you can't say, since there's not a lot of dam, I'm going to assume I didn't have hargasha when you had the hargasha feeling. It's true that, maybe she doesn't know what the hargasha feels like usually, and it's true that, but you're missing one of the two key factors. You have the fact that you don't have a lot of dam, but you can't say, well, there was no hargasha. When you felt the hargasha, or at least you might have felt the hargasha. So therefore, then we consider you to be a nida deraisa. That is the Aruch HaShulchan's way of understanding. Now, what's the other way? The other way is Rav Elyashiv. I can't find my notes. I have been giving all the shiurim without my notes since I moved. I don't know where my notes are, but they'll come up at some point. But the Rav Elyashiv way, I think it was the Chachmas Adam that he's working with. I opened the Chachmas Adam and I couldn't find it, so I'm not really sure whether it is or isn't a Chachmas Adam. But the Rav Elyashiv way, Rav Elyashiv definitely, this my memory is certain, that the Rav Elyashiv goes like this. Rav Elyashiv says, when the pasuk says bebasra, it means that she becomes a nida midaraisa when she has a normal flow. It used to be, what defined the normal flow? A normal flow was defined by hargashos. Times changed. Our women don't feel hargashos anymore. They don't. By the way, if you think about this, if you know the styles, you'd be very surprised at which one's Rav Moshe and which one's Rav Elyashiv. You would expect Rav Moshe to be the one to say, times changed, the metzias changed, and we're going to come up with something new. Whereas you would have thought that Rav Elyashiv would say, no. If it says in the Gemara they have hargashos, they have hargashos. And that's the din, and that's unchangeable. So they actually are on opposite camps from what you would have expected. So Elyashiv says times changed. The women don't have hargashos anymore. Okay, so what do we learn from we still have the pasuk in the Torah. What is it teaching us? It's teaching us that anything that's a normal flow, whatever is a normal flow, is going to make the woman a nida. Normal blood makes, let's put it that way, normal blood makes a woman nida. Okay, so wait a second. Is it normal to have kesamim? Yeah, it's normal for a woman to have a kesam. It's not a weird, strange thing. And for some women, it's very normal, right? Some women less, some women more. But for some women, it's very normal. So now, what are we going to do? Do we just make some deraisa? So Dr. Rav Elyashiv, there's another limud in the Gemara in Gittin, from Rekiva, I believe, that says, dam beloy kesam. We make a diak, dam beloy kesam. And therefore, only when it's proper dam does it make the woman a nida. And there's a lot of different ways of explaining this, but this is the way that Rav Elyashiv is working with. Dam beloy kesam, only it's but not when it's a kesam. A kesam doesn't make a woman a nida. Okay, so how do you define? What's dam, what's kesam? So that's Rav Elyashiv. When it's vaday from her body, it's called dam. When it's 95% likelihood, when it's almost for sure from her body, it's kesem. For sure from her body, dam. Almost not, even if it's almost for sure, but not for sure from her body, it's kesem. Therefore, when she goes and feels it coming, and she puts a pad on and there's blood on it, that is considered vadai from her body. But if she finds a stain on her underwear, that's not vadai from the body. That's, no, don't get me wrong. High likelihood, yes. But it's not vadai. And if it's not vadai, therefore it is considered a kesem, and it's not nida midaraisa. Nida midaraisa is only when it's vadai from the body. And by the way, just derech agav, as a side point, if you go to a Talmud of Rav Elyashiv with a pad that has even a little blood in it, they would say tamei midaraisa. Whereas you go to your average American Rav with a pad with a little blood, they would say ein makabel tumah, have a good day. It's no problem. I mean, you got to obviously watch out what's going on, but I'm saying there's no problem. There's an ein makabel tumah, got a little blood, who cares? Rav Elyashiv Talmud, a little blood on the pad. So it's two factors. One is that you put it on, whatever, but he also actually differentiates, which I don't fully understand. I'll tell you it. When it's just the beged, then it's probably from her, not for sure from her. When it's the pad, which is a drop closer to her body, that little extra closeness, now all of a sudden it gets elevated to vade from her body. That's what he says. You could argue with this point, but that's what Rav Elyashiv says. Okay, fine. So that is, now why Lefi Rav Elyashiv by Bedikas aid is she a Tamim Midaraisa? So this part goes very smooth with Rav Elyashiv. It's vade from her body. You did a bedika. You know it's from her body. And therefore, she's, in such a case, it's vade from her, and therefore she is Tamim Midaraisa. So that is the idea as to why our women are Tamim Midaraisa. Just to sum that up quickly, according to the Aruch Shulchan, which is Ramosha and Shevet Levi, our women nowadays still feel hargashas, they just don't know about it. And according to Rav Elyashiv, no, women, they don't feel hargashas nowadays. But anything, the normal blood that definitely came from her body, that makes her a Nida Midaraisa. Okay, now I just want to get on to the next area of confusion, which is a common area of confusion, which is connected to this. This is, I've heard this question many times. Okay, now when a woman finds dam, less than a gris, on her underwear, or finds dam on a colored garment, right? Or finds dam on an ina makabel tama. What do we say? We say tar. And everybody always, a lot of people have in the back of their mind this little thought, like, come on, who are we kidding? We all know it's blood. We all know where it's from. Are you really going to tell me that she's tar? I mean, I'm not complaining, maybe, but like, give me a break, right? Everybody had that thought in their head a little bit. I think we have unanimous thought. Everybody had that thought. I mean, I've been asked this question so many times. Also, it's like this. So that thought means the questioner is starting from the wrong starting point. And let me explain. The starting point. If the starting point is from the opposite side, it all makes sense. Let me explain. Midaraisa, as we discussed until now, the pasuk says bebasra. It's only with our hargasha, and with whichever shot of hargasha we want, that makes a woman a nida midaraisa. Meaning, I don't care whether you go with the Aruch HaShulchan, Ramosha, or you go with Rav Elyashiv. A woman finds blood on her underwear, wherever it is. It's not her regular nida flow. Midaraisa, she is mutter to her husband. She's mutter. There's a starting point that you're expecting that any blood that comes from her body makes her usher to her husband. It's not true. Bisman pre-gezeris, right? Blood that comes from her body does not usher to her husband. It's only a normal flow, or with a hargasha. So therefore, this type of blood does not usher her, midaraisa. Came along the Rabbanan, and they made a new gezerah to usher to her husband when you have this type of blood. But they made 3 carve-outs, and we'll explain them in a minute, where a woman is not tamei midarabanan via kesem in these 3 cases. We know the 3 cases are pax mikigris, we have colored garments, and we have ein makabel tama. Now, why did they make this gezerah? Why did they had nothing better to do? So there were 3 reasons really behind this gezerah. The 3 reasons that were behind this gezerah is a chashash. Maybe she had a hargasha and she didn't notice it. So we're worried. Maybe there was a hargasha and she just didn't chop it. And therefore we're going to ask her anyways. That's number 1. Chashash number 2. And by the way, these chashashes aren't mutually exclusive. You could hold more than one of these chashashes. Chashash number 2 is that if we say that she's tahar, and this you could totally relate to, then the woman will get confused and think she's tar even when she had hargasha. You told me last time I had all this blood I was tar. Then she's going to think next time that she has all this blood it's tar. Right? So that's a reasonable chashash. And chashash number 3, we have to take ourselves back into time of Tumah v'Taharis and Truma and etc. That apparently the blood that comes out of her body without a hargasha, this kesem, does not metama her to her husband, does not make her asa to her husband. but it would be able to be metama taharis. If that blood goes on truma, gevalt. We don't want that blood going on truma. That could still be metama taharis, even though it doesn't answer to her husband. Now, why is that? Because it's Tamah V'Tahara, and we don't know why that is. That's just how it is. You know what I'm saying? So that's how it is. Tamah V'Tahara. So therefore, what's going to happen? If you tell her that she's mutter to her husband, she's going to think, oh, well, that fruit that the blood went on, that truma, is gone fine. And I don't have to be careful that the blood doesn't get on the truma and the truma doesn't get in the blood and whatever, because this is no problem blood. Now, you could definitely see how a woman would get confused with this. If she thinks it's good, she thinks it's good. No, this is good, that's not good. It's confusing. So, therefore, we answered Kesamim. Now, why? Now, those are the three reasons why we answered Kesamim, and we just spoke out already the three carve-outs. Let's go through them one at a time to explain the carve-outs. Now, let's start off with the Ein Makabel Tumah, because that's what we just explained, and now we're going to understand it. So the reason why in Makabel Tumah we weren't geyser is because our thing was a woman's going to be so confused. Wait a second. If it goes on to she's going to think that the thing that it went to is tahar when it's really tummy. Now, if her blood goes on to an Ein Makabel Tumah item, is that item tummy? No, because it's Ein Makabel Tumah. Therefore, we don't have to worry about confusion. This blood went somewhere where it doesn't cause problems. So she can remain tahar to her husband. She can remain mutter to her husband. She's not going to be confused. You know, she has to know that when it goes on, because this is fine and that's fine and everything's fine. But, so we weren't going to go and ask her when it lands on Ein Makabel Tumah items. Let me say that clear. We're not going to answer her to her husband when the blood goes on the Ein Makabel Tumah items, because there's no area for confusion. It's not metama the item, and it doesn't answer her to her husband. But when it goes on a Makabel Tumah item, so now we have to ask her to her husband to avoid confusion, because we need it to be parallel. Okay. I think the Sidrei Tahara says that, if I remember correctly. Once again, I'm doing a lot of memory, less notes. Fine. Why were Chazal geyser on a kesem only a kesem larger than a gris? So over here, you have to take yourselves back to olden days, and apparently there was an ein kol mita she'ein lo machelas. There was no such thing as a bed that didn't she'ein lo tipas dam. Everybody's bed had little spots of blood on the bed, because everything was infested with lice and etc., and that just was the way of life in once upon a time. And therefore, if you would treat her bed like you would treat a bedika cloth, meaning for every speck of blood that you would find on her bed, a woman would never be able to come tahar, because you always find a little speck of blood somewhere. So really, in theory, they would have been geyser on a little bit less, a smaller amount, but they couldn't have. They didn't have an option. What is the size of a gris? The size of a gris, apparently, they had like these super lice back in the day, I guess. It's pretty scary. And if you'd smash them, the blood stain would be the size of a gris, which is 19 millimeter circle.
Maybe like bed bugs.
Bed bugs, maybe, I don't know. Bed bugs are big?
A lot of blood.
Yeah?
I mean, they're not so big. They're bigger than lice, but...
Interesting, maybe. I know there's I remember, who was it? The Bear Moshe discussing whether mosquitoes in the mountains, going with that share, whatever. There's a whole Bear Moshe on this. Talking about mosquitoes and the amount of blood that it might carry, etc. I don't remember the exact details, but I remember he discusses about that. So, back over here. So, therefore, since that would be normal to have those lice around that carried all that blood, therefore, we couldn't be geyser for anything less. So, one could argue that nowadays, that we don't have this issue anymore. Our beds are clean from lice. And furthermore, how big are our lice? Way smaller than this amount. You're never going to... I don't think we have any bugs around that you would smash, and it would be the size of a gris. A gris is the size of a penny. 19 millimeters. diameter in a perfect circle, which they don't come in perfect circles, but whatever. That's the best we could do. So we don't have bugs that big, normal, whatever. So maybe it should be a smaller amount. So maybe we should be machmir for smaller sizes. So there's a technical answer, and I think I have two logical answers, if I remember correctly. Can't remember offhand. Yeah. So I'll give you the technical. The technical answer is Chazal were only geyser on more than a gris. Right? Chazal were only geyser on more than a gris. We don't have the authority now to come and say less than that amount. It's going to be aser. And therefore, we're going to, less than 19 millimeters, we're not going to aser. Less than the size that we call a gris, we're not going to aser. We don't have the authority. They were geyser at that size, even though nowadays we would be able to handle a smaller size, so to speak. But that was the gzeira, and we don't change the gzeira. Now, you might want to feel a little guilty, so to speak, about this. Wait a second. So if Chazal would want a geyser that, we'll call it a half a penny, a shekel. Chazal, shekels are smaller than pennies, right? So Chazal would want a geyser on a shekel, right? So maybe we should be machmir. It's not really so the case, because L'maisa, Chazal, their main gezerah, seemingly, had to do with protecting Taharis. Right? They wanted to protect Taharis. Nowadays, we don't have the issue of protecting Taharis anymore. They didn't want, if you're gonna say that you're mutter to your husband, then you're gonna end up letting that blood go into Taharis. Well, we don't have that issue anymore. So Memela, we don't have to feel bad about not being machmer. Now, maybe we should forget the whole thing altogether. And because we don't have Taharis, so we should forget the whole thing in Kesamim altogether, and it's all good. That we don't have the authority to do either, because once we have a gezerah of anything more than a gris, a gezerah is a gezerah. So it stays at a gris. Fine. Big date Tzvayim. Why is it that when that dam goes onto a blue underwear, everything's fine? Come on, let's face it. We all know what's going on, right? Well, why is it tar? We all know that if that stain was on white, it would be a problem. So how can we get away with this? This is trickery, huh? You've all thought it. You've all been asked by your wives, right? How can we get away with this? So you have to understand what happened at the time that the gezerah was made. At the time of the Mishnayos, for example, there's a Mishnah that says there's only 4 shades of red and 1 shade of black. 4 shades of red that are matama. Right? And if blood came out, which was one of these 4 shades, she's tameh. Meaning that there are other shades of red that are tar. I don't know how many shades of red. I don't know if it's like 4 out of 6 or 4 out of 100. I'm not really sure how many shades of red there are that are tar. That I don't know. But I know there's for sure shades of red that are tar and 4 shades that are tameh of red. Now, eventually what happened is that we lost our Messiah, even Bisman Gemara. We lost our Gemara. We were no longer able to be Hafchin Bein Dam L'Dam. We weren't able to differentiate between different shades of red. And therefore, we were asered anything which was Neitel Ad Mimas. Anything reddish, we asered. Which is a big chumrah. We lost our Messiah to differentiate between different shades of red. Okay. At the time of the Gezerah of Kesamim, this was at the time when we were only asering 4 shades of red. We were not asering all shades of red. Now, on white, you could differentiate between different shades of red. On blue, you could tell that something's red, but you can't differentiate between different shades of red. Right? You can't do it. So Chazal had 2 possible choices. They could have asered and big date tzvayim as well. And it would be on white, you would only be aser the 4 shades of red. And on colored garments, you would aser all the shades of red. That was one option, because there's no way of differentiating on colored. Or the other option was to be more mako. And, we're going to aser on white, and we're going to aser nothing on colors. So Chazal felt to aser all the shades on colored would be a chumr yisera. And therefore, they And therefore, since that would be a chumr yisera, that would be too much, they decided they'd rather aser nothing uncolored. So they aser nothing uncolored, and therefore the gzeira was only said on white. They didn't want to create extra chumras. Now, it's actually interesting if you think about it, that... So let me just play it out as a cab. So eventually what happened is that we lost the Messiah to differentiate between different shades of red, and then if you actually think about it, an argument can be made that right now we can't actually differentiate between different shades on white. So one could actually argue that even nowadays we should aser we should matter even on white. Think about the argument, because when they weren't able to differentiate in color, Chazal decided not to aser all the colored. They decided to only aser the white. So nowadays that we can't even differentiate on white, an argument could definitely be made that even white should be good. But Lamaisa, we can't do that because Chazal were goyzer on white, so it applies on white. Fine. Fine. And and I think we got that. That's the basic idea. Let's go further. I just lost my concentration there. Fine. Let's go back into this now. Something else confusing. The third point of confusion that I want to discuss is: who's ever heard of the idea of a woman after she's going to the bathroom, she shouldn't look at the tissue? You guys been taught that? After going, don't look. Why not? Well, maybe there's blood on it. What type of halachas is not to look? You ever hear anybody say like you should go to a restaurant, and when you go to the restaurant, you should go to the restaurant, but don't look at the hechsher, because maybe it's a bad hechsher. And you're going to go there, you're going to eat, but why should you look? Maybe it's a bad hechsher. So don't look. What type of nonsense is this? Who ever heard of such a thing? Don't look. No, if she's in need, don't you want to know about it? So what's pshat in don't look? So fine. So and anybody ever heard also this idea it's better to have colored toilet paper? A little bit, maybe half. Okay, I was taught that. Fine. What's pshat in that? Okay, so. Yeah. Now next, if you find blood, what's the big deal anyways if you find blood? Who cares? Meaning, a piece of toilet paper is an Ein Makabel Tuma. Right? And if a piece of toilet paper is Ein Makabel Tuma, and often the toilet paper is colored, so if it's colored, and it's an Ein Makabel Tuma, she's going to be tar anyways with this colored often Ein Makabel Tuma toilet paper, so it's really harmless. So what's this whole, what's the whole big deal? Why are you not checking? And if you check, who cares? So it goes like this. We're going to go through a nice couple of Geshmak Sugyas relating to a simple piece of toilet paper. Amazing. Fine. So there's a Gemara that says and we already touched on this Gemara a little bit earlier, there's three sensations that you get confused with the sensation of hargasha with that sensation. Now, one of those three sensations is hatalas me'raglayim, a woman going to the bathroom. So that will either, she won't realize that she had the hargasha, or she actually has that feeling when she goes to the bathroom, and she doesn't know whether to attribute it to the hargasha or to just going to the bathroom. So this feeling that she had, if you find dam after one of those three feelings, one of them hatalas me'raglayim, so now you have to be choishish she had a hargasha and she'd be a nida. Just like after b'dikas eid, you find a little blood, you're choishish. So too, if you find a little blood after hatalas me'raglayim, same idea, you should have to be choishish, and therefore she'll be a nida. Now, how far after going to the bathroom are we gonna? And this would be deresa, by the way, like a b'dika seid, like a b'dika cloth. So how far after? So the Gemara, the Shulchan Aruch says the amount of time it takes to do a bedika. How long does it take to do a bedika? I don't know, 2 seconds? I don't know. 3 seconds? I don't know. So the amount of time that it takes to do a bedika, that's the amount of time you have. Zakt the Shevet Levi. The Shevet Levi, if she does a bedika, if she wipes herself and finds blood within a minute from when her flow stopped, her stream stopped, within a minute from then, so we have to be choishish. That's enough time. We're not bucky in exactly how long it is, so anything within a minute. So this is actually a very big chumrah of the Shevet Levi, the Rav Vosner. With this, you're going to have, as long as the woman wasn't like busy on her phone or something like that, then if she just went to the bathroom and then was, wiping afterwards, it's going to be within a minute. She's probably not just sitting around there hanging out. If she's on her phone, she's on her phone. But if she's not, then she's, she probably wiped herself and you have this blood. And I don't care if it's an makabel tuma colored or whatever it is. It's just like a b'tikas aid, which is an makabel tuma. It's a problem, and she would be a nida midaraisa. So if you ask a Talmud of Rav Vosner, that's what it'll tell you. You bring the toilet paper with a little blood, aser, tameh. Okay? Rav Moshe Feinstein, he said it's if she took a normal amount of time, then we assume that the time elapsed already, which by the way sounds like it makes sense, 3 seconds, from when she finished going to the bathroom till she wiped. But if the baby was crying, the phone was ringing, the cake was burning, and she rushed out of the bathroom, then she finds blood, then she would be a nida midaraisa. Because if she does it calmly, normally, regularly, she's fine. But if she was in a rush out of the bathroom, then it's a problem. That is Rav Moshe Feinstein, and that's how most Rabbanim go. In Bnei Brak they probably go like the Shevet Levi. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, so then how do they permit not looking?
I don't think they permit not looking.
Oh, okay.
I don't think that not looking is not. You won't hear that in Bnei Brak. I don't think. I imagine not. Yeah. Fine. Now. So first thing is, now why don't we want to? If to matter this case, we're going to have to go with Rav Moshe Feinstein as opposed to the Shevet Levi, which is what we'll generally do. But we're ready. The woman finds blood on the tissue. Lefi the Shevet Levi, she's nida midaraisa. So we prefer not opening up that storyline. Next, there's a Lefi Rav Elyashiv. Remember what we said previously? Rav Elyashiv learns from the drasha Dam B'loi Kesam. Did that for sure come from her? Yeah, for sure it came from her. So Dr. Rav Elyashiv, nida midaraisa. Rav Elyashiv for a different reason. Rav Elyashiv is not coming from the same place as the Shevet Levi, but according to Rav Elyashiv, she'll be a nida also, because anything when we know that the blood vaday came from her, we can't get around. We can't get around that. Okay, fine. Now let's keep on going. So, okay, the woman.